Ben was a cowboy with a quiet soul and a wandering heart. He had no home to call his own, no family waiting for him, and no past that anyone in town cared to remember. His life had been shaped by long roads, dusty trails, and the endless sky. Every morning he woke with the sun, and every night he slept under stars that seemed to shine just for him. Cedar Creek was a small town he had passed many times before, but today something felt different. Today he was not just passing through. As Ben rode into the town, his worn boots tapping against the wooden stirrups, he noticed how quiet the streets were. Some townsfolk worked in the shops or tended to chores, but most simply watched from their porches, curious about the stranger, who rode in with so little and carried so much in his eyes. Ben nodded politely, tipping his hat, but he did not stop. He was not here for the town. He was here for something else he could not yet name. At the edge of Cedar Creek, where the wooden fences ended and the wild grass began, Ben saw it. The ranch was nearly invisible from the road, hidden behind overgrown trees and tangled weeds. The fences were broken, the barn leaned to one side, and the windows of the old house were dusty and cracked. It looked abandoned, forgotten, and hopeless. Yet Ben felt a pull toward it, as if the ranch had been waiting for him all these years. He rode closer, stepping carefully over fallen beams and thorny bushes. The wind carried the faint smell of earth and old hay. Ben could almost hear whispers from the past, voices of people who had lived and worked here long ago. He swung down from his horse, brushing the dust off his coat, and walked through the entrance. "This place has potential," Ben said softly, more to himself than anyone else. He looked at the cracked barn roof, the broken fences, and the empty garden. It was a mess, but in his mind, he could see what it could become. He imagined horses, grazing in the fields, chickens pecking near the barn, and a garden full of vegetables. He imagined a home full of life, laughter, and warmth. Ben did not know why, but he felt a deep connection to this place. Maybe it reminded him of stories his father had told when he was a boy. Stories of hardworking ranchers, of wide open spaces, of mornings filled with sunlight and the sound of roosters crowing. Maybe it reminded him of himself. He decided to stay. He pitched a small tent near the barn, unpacked what little he had, and made the first plans. Every morning he woke before sunrise. He fed the few animals left behind, 2 old horses, a stray dog, and a few chickens that had survived on their own. Then he worked tirelessly on the fences, repairing broken planks and tightening loose nails. The work was exhausting, but Ben did not mind. Each day brought a small sense of progress, and that was enough to keep him going. The townspeople began to notice. From a distance, they watched the lone cowboy work. Some whispered to each other, questioning why he bothered with a place that seemed hopeless. Others shook their heads, thinking he would give up after a week. But Ben ignored them. He had never worked for the approval of others. He worked for the land, for the animals, and for the dream he saw in his mind. As the days passed, Ben found old tools scattered around the ranch. A rusted hammer, a few nails, and even some seeds hidden in a shed. He cleaned and repaired the tools, and slowly they became useful again. He planted the seeds in small patches of soil, watered them carefully, and hoped they would grow. Every sprout that emerged brought a smile to his face. Every repaired fence, every cleaned barn stall, every small victory made him feel closer to the ranch he was bringing back to life. Life on the ranch was not easy. Ben faced challenges every day. The wind blew down new fences he had built, rain flooded part of the barn, and one morning he found that some of the chickens had wandered off. Yet he never gave up. He learned to adapt. He built stronger fences, repaired the barn roof, and gently guided the chickens back to their coop. Each problem was a lesson, and Ben learned quickly. One evening, after a long day of work, Ben sat on the steps of the old house and watched the sun dip below the horizon. The sky was painted with shades of orange and pink. The wind whispered through the grass, and the ranch, though far from perfect, looked different. It looked alive. It looked hopeful. Ben felt a quiet satisfaction in his heart. This was only the beginning, but he knew he had made the right choice. A few children from the town, curious about the strange cowboy, began to visit the ranch. They watched him work, asked questions, and sometimes offered to help. Ben welcomed them with a smile, showing them how to mend a fence or feed a chicken. The children were amazed at his patience and skill. They started calling him Mr. Ben, and soon more people began to notice. The ranch was no longer invisible. One day, while exploring the far corner of the property, Ben found an old well hidden under vines. It had not been used for years, but the water was still clear. He cleaned the well, built a simple pulley system, and for the first time, the ranch had a steady source of water. This small achievement felt monumental. It reminded Ben that even forgotten places could have value and life could return with care and effort. Ben also discovered old furniture inside the house. A broken chair, a dusty table, and a few shelves. He cleaned and repaired them, slowly turning the empty rooms into a place he could rest. He hung simple curtains, swept the floors, and even painted the walls with colors he found in old paint cans. Each day the house became more than just a shelter. It became a home. Even the animals seemed to sense the change. The old horses became stronger and more trusting. The chickens clucked happily as they wandered in the yard. The stray dog, whom Ben named Rusty, refused to leave his side. There was a quiet harmony in the ranch, a sense of life returning after years of neglect. Ben often thought about the future. He dreamed of expanding the garden, planting fruit trees, and having more animals. He dreamed of welcoming more people to the ranch, of teaching them the value of hard work, patience, and love for the land. The possibilities were endless, and with each passing day, he felt closer to making that dream a reality. The townspeople, once skeptical, began to change their minds. They saw the transformation happening before their eyes. The ranch was no longer a forgotten place. It was alive, and the credit went to the homeless cowboy who refused to give up. Children talked about the ranch with excitement, adults watched with admiration, and even the mayor stopped by to see the progress. Ben never sought attention. He never asked for praise. He worked quietly, letting his actions speak for themselves. But slowly, the town began to understand that this was no ordinary cowboy. He was a man with vision, with patience, and with the courage to believe that even the most forgotten places could be brought back to life. As the first part of his journey came to an end, Ben looked around the ranch with quiet pride. The fences were repaired, the barn was functional, the garden had small green sprouts, and the house was no longer empty. The ranch was waking up, and so was Ben. He had found purpose, and in doing so, he had begun to heal himself. The sun set over Cedar Creek, painting the ranch in warm colors. Ben stood at the edge of the property, Rusty by his side, and whispered, "This is just the beginning." Had no idea what challenges awaited him, what obstacles he would face, or what surprises the future held. But one thing was certain. The forgotten ranch had found its cowboy, and together, they were ready to create something that would leave everyone speechless. The morning sun rose over Cedar Creek, casting a golden light over Ben's ranch. The birds chirped happily, the horses stretched in the paddock, and Rusty ran through the grass with joy. For Ben, the quiet beauty of the morning was more than just peaceful. It was a promise. A promise that with hard work and patience, the ranch could become a place full of life again. Ben started his day by checking on the garden. The tiny sprouts were growing taller each day, their green leaves reaching for the sunlight. He watered them carefully, ensuring that each seedling received enough to thrive. The little garden was still small, but it was a symbol of progress, a sign that even forgotten things could bloom with attention and care. After the garden, Ben went to the barn. He brushed the horses and fed them fresh hay. The animals had begun to trust him completely, responding to his gentle voice and firm but kind hands. The old horses had regained some of their strength, and even the chickens seemed more energetic, clucking happily as they wandered the yard. Rusty ran around the barn, chasing small shadows full of life and excitement. But just as Ben felt a sense of peace, he noticed a problem. One of the fences along the north field had collapsed during the night. A section of the wooden fence had been weakened by rain and rot, and the horses could have wandered out if he hadn't seen it early. Ben frowned but did not panic. He had faced problems before, and he knew the solution lay in patience and effort. He gathered his tools and set to work, carefully removing the broken planks. As he worked, he thought about how easy it would have been for someone else to ignore this ranch, to leave it to decay completely. But he was different. He had a vision, and every nail he hammered, every board he replaced brought that vision closer to reality. By midday, the fence was repaired. The horses nickered softly as Ben finished the last plank, as if they understood that their home was safe again. Ben smiled, feeling a quiet pride. The ranch was beginning to show signs of strength, but he knew there would be many challenges ahead. Later that afternoon, Ben decided to explore the far side of the property. He wanted to see if there were other areas that needed attention. The land was wide and wild, with tall grass and scattered trees. It was beautiful, but it was also clear that he had much work to do. As he walked, he noticed an old, crumbling shed hidden behind a thicket of bushes. The roof was caved in, and the walls were covered in moss and vines. It had been forgotten for decades. Ben approached the shed carefully. He could hear the faint scurrying of small animals inside. With gentle hands, he opened the door and looked around. The shed was filled with old tools, broken furniture, and piles of dirt and debris. But in the corner, he found something interesting: seeds, more old tools, and a small wooden box with handwritten notes. The notes were instructions from the previous owner, tips on farming, caring for animals, and maintaining the land. Ben read them carefully, feeling a connection to the people who had once lived and worked here. "This place has stories," he whispered. "I just have to bring them back to life." As he cleaned the shed, Ben thought about how much effort it would take. The shed could be repaired and turned into a storage area for tools and feed. It could be another step toward making the ranch fully functional again. He worked until the sun began to dip behind the horizon, covering the ranch in warm shades of orange and gold. Exhausted but satisfied, he returned to the house knowing he had made progress. That night, while Ben slept in the small house he had repaired, a storm approached. Thunder rumbled in the distance and the wind began to pick up. Ben awoke to the sound of rain pounding on the roof. He could hear the water dripping through a small leak in the barn roof and feared the damage it might cause to the new fence and garden. Without hesitation, he grabbed a lantern and ran outside, guided by his concern for the ranch. The rain poured down, soaking him to the bone, but Ben worked tirelessly. He propped up the fence posts that were weak, covered the barn opening with tarps, and secured the animals in a safe area. Rusty stayed by his side, shaking the rain off but refusing to leave. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving a trail of mud, fallen branches, and small destruction. Ben looked over the ranch and sighed, knowing that rebuilding would take time and effort. Despite the storm, Ben refused to give up. He saw every challenge as part of the journey. He repaired the barn roof, strengthened the fences, and cleared the debris. Each obstacle taught him something new about patience, strength, and the importance of persistence. The townspeople who had been watching from a distance began to notice his dedication. Some even offered to help, bringing supplies or lending tools. Ben welcomed the assistance with gratitude, though he preferred to work quietly on most tasks. One afternoon, while clearing weeds near the garden, Ben noticed a small bird caught in the tangled grass. Its wing was injured and it could not fly. Ben gently picked up the bird and brought it inside. He cleaned its wound, made a small nest for it in the house, and fed it carefully. Over the next few days, the bird regained strength. Ben marveled at how something so small could survive and recover with a little care. It reminded him of the ranch itself and even of himself. As the weeks passed, the ranch began to transform. The garden grew taller and stronger, filled with leafy vegetables and bright flowers. The barn became more stable and the fences stood firm. The shed was repaired and organized with tools ready for daily work. Even the house seemed more alive, filled with warmth, light, and the smell of fresh wood and clean soil. Ben also began to dream bigger. He imagined planting an orchard, raising more animals, and even welcoming visitors to the ranch. He wanted to teach children about caring for animals, working with the land, and the joy of seeing something grow from nothing. The thought of sharing his dream made him smile. One day, a young boy named Tom came to the ranch. He had heard stories from other children about the mysterious cowboy who had restored the old ranch. Tom was shy at first, but Ben welcomed him warmly. He showed Tom how to feed the chickens, gather eggs, and plant seeds. The boy's eyes sparkled with excitement as he learned new skills. Over time, more children came, eager to learn and help. The ranch was no longer a lonely place. It was alive with laughter, curiosity, and energy. Ben realized that the ranch had become more than just a home for him and the animals. It had become a place of hope, a place where people could learn, grow, and dream. Every challenge, every storm, every problem had strengthened him and the land. He knew that the journey was far from over, but he felt ready for whatever lay ahead. As part 2 of his story came to an end, Ben stood on a small hill overlooking the ranch. The sun set in brilliant shades of red and gold. The barn, fences, garden, and shed looked strong and alive. Children played in the yard, the horses grazed peacefully, and Rusty lay nearby content. Ben whispered to himself, "We are just getting started." He knew that the road ahead would not always be easy. There would be more storms, more obstacles, and moments of doubt. But he also knew that he had discovered something powerful, a place worth fighting for and a dream worth chasing. The ranch had become his purpose, and in rebuilding it, he had begun to rebuild himself. The morning air was crisp and fresh as Ben stepped outside. The ranch looked alive in the early light, dew glistening on the grass and birds singing in the trees. Rusty ran ahead, barking playfully, and the horses neighed softly from their paddock. Ben smiled as he took in the view. Each day the ranch seemed more like a home, more like the dream he had imagined when he first arrived. Ben started his morning with his usual routine, feeding the animals and checking the garden. The vegetables had grown taller, and some flowers had started to bloom. The garden was small, but it was healthy and vibrant. Every new sprout reminded him of the potential hidden in forgotten places. He thought about how much effort it had taken to get to this point, and yet he felt that this was just the beginning. After the chores, Ben decided to explore the northern field again. He had noticed a patch of wild grass and overgrown bushes that seemed untouched for years. The land was rough and uneven, but he could imagine it filled with life, perhaps a pasture for more animals or even a place for a small orchard. He knew it would be difficult to clear the area, but the challenge excited him. As Ben worked through the morning, he heard the sound of voices approaching. Looking up, he saw a group of townspeople walking toward the ranch. Some carried tools, others had baskets of supplies. They had come to offer their help. At first, Ben was hesitant. He was used to working alone, and he did not seek attention or praise. But he also realized that a dream could grow faster with the support of others. "Good morning, Mr. Ben," said Mrs. Collins, the town baker. "We heard about your ranch and we thought we could help today." Ben nodded, feeling a mix of surprise and gratitude. "Thank you," he replied. "There is plenty of work to do. Let's get started." The townspeople worked alongside Ben, clearing the northern field of weeds and brush. Children carried small bundles of sticks, women gathered stones, and men repaired fences and barns. Even the mayor had come to lend a hand. The sense of community filled Ben with hope. The ranch, once forgotten, was becoming a place where people could come together to create something meaningful. By midday, the northern field was partially cleared. Ben looked at the progress with pride. "This is a good start," he said, wiping sweat from his brow. "We can plant an orchard here next season." The townspeople cheered, happy to be part of the transformation. That afternoon, Ben returned to the house to rest. As he sat on the porch, he noticed a young girl watching him from a distance. She held a small basket and looked shy. Ben waved gently, inviting her to come closer. "My name is Lily," she said softly. "I wanted to bring these flowers for your garden." Ben smiled warmly. "Thank you, Lily. They will be beautiful here." He helped her plant the flowers, carefully arranging them among the vegetables and greenery. As they worked together, Ben realized that the ranch was not just a place of work. It was becoming a place of learning, growth, and connection. Over the next few days, Ben continued to improve the ranch. He repaired the barn roof completely, reinforced the fences, and planted more vegetables in the garden. Each day brought new challenges, but also new achievements. The town began to notice the changes, and people started visiting regularly. Children played in the yard, families brought seeds and plants, and neighbors shared stories of the ranch's history. One morning, while exploring the shed, Ben found an old map tucked away in a wooden box. The map showed the entire ranch, including areas he had not yet discovered. There were notes about water sources, fertile soil, and old orchards that had once thrived. Ben studied the map carefully, planning his next steps. He realized that the ranch had been much larger and more productive in the past, and with careful work, it could reach that level again. Excited by the possibilities, Ben shared the plan with the townspeople. "If we work together, we can restore the orchard, expand the garden, and even raise more animals," he said. "The ranch can become a place where everyone can learn and grow." The townspeople nodded eagerly, inspired by his vision. As spring approached, Ben focused on preparing the land for planting. He tilled the soil, added compost, and marked areas for new crops. Children helped him, learning the importance of patience and care. Each day the ranch became more organized and productive. Ben felt a deep satisfaction in his work. The ranch was no longer just a dream. It was becoming a reality. One afternoon, while working near the old well, Ben noticed smoke rising from the town. Curious, he left Rusty to watch the animals and rode toward the source. He found that a small fire had started in one of the fields. Without hesitation, Ben grabbed water from the well and rushed to help. With the assistance of the townspeople, they managed to put out the fire before it caused major damage. The incident brought the town closer together. People admired Ben not just for his work on the ranch, but for his courage and quick thinking. The children cheered, and the adults thanked him for keeping everyone safe. Ben felt a quiet pride, knowing that the ranch had become a place where people could rely on each other and learn the value of community. In the following weeks, Ben focused on planting the orchard. He dug holes for young trees, carefully placing them in the soil, and watered them diligently. Each tree was a symbol of new life and hope. The townspeople helped him, carrying water, preparing soil, and learning how to care for the young plants. Ben taught them everything he knew, sharing knowledge with patience and kindness. As the orchard began to take shape, the ranch grew more beautiful each day. Flowers bloomed, vegetables flourished, and the animals thrived. Rusty played happily with the children, and the horses grazed peacefully in the fields. Ben often stood on the porch of the house looking out over the land with quiet satisfaction. He had taken a forgotten ranch and, with hard work and determination, turned it into a place full of life. One evening, as the sun set in brilliant shades of orange and pink, Ben sat with Rusty and thought about the journey so far. He had faced storms, challenges, and doubts, yet he had never given up. The ranch was thriving, and the town was beginning to see the results of his dedication. He realized that the greatest reward was not the physical transformation of the land, but the connections he had made along the way. The children had started to come regularly, learning about planting, feeding animals, and caring for the environment. Families brought supplies and offered help, sharing their own knowledge and experience. The town had begun to understand that the ranch was not just Ben's project. It was a place for everyone to learn, grow, and create memories. Ben also began to think about the future. He dreamed of expanding the garden, adding more animals, and creating a place where people from other towns could come to learn and experience life on a ranch. The possibilities seemed endless, and with each passing day he felt closer to achieving that dream. As Part 3 came to an end, the ranch had transformed into a thriving, lively place. The garden was flourishing. The orchard was planted, the barn and fences were strong, and the house had become a welcoming home. Ben had not only rebuilt the ranch, but he had also rebuilt hope for himself and the town. He stood on the small hill overlooking the fields, Rusty at his side, and whispered, "This is just the beginning. There is so much more to do, and we will make it even better." The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and red. Ben felt a sense of peace, knowing that the ranch was no longer forgotten. It had a purpose, a future, and a story that was only beginning to unfold. Spring had fully arrived at Ben's ranch, and the fields were alive with green. The garden flourished with vegetables, the young orchard trees swayed gently in the breeze, and the animals thrived under Ben's careful watch. Rusty ran freely among the fields, barking happily while the horses grazed peacefully. The ranch, once forgotten, had become a place of life, growth, and hope. Ben walked through the barn early in the morning, checking the animals in the stable. Everything seemed in order, and for the first time he felt a quiet moment of satisfaction. He had come a long way from the day he first arrived, when the ranch was overgrown and empty. But he knew the journey was far from over. There were still challenges ahead, and he had learned that every success brought new responsibilities. That afternoon, as he worked in the garden, a rider appeared on the dirt road leading to the ranch. Ben recognized the visitor immediately. It was Mr. Harris, a wealthy landowner from a nearby town. Mr. Harris was known for buying land, sometimes helping small ranchers, but often taking control of successful farms. His sudden arrival made Ben cautious, though he greeted the man politely. "Good afternoon, Ben," Mr. Harris said, tipping his hat. "I've been hearing about the work you've done here." "Impressive, really. I wanted to see it for myself." Ben nodded, trying to hide his unease. "Thank you, sir. The ranch has needed care for a long time. I'm just trying to bring it back to life." Mr. Harris smiled, though there was a hint of calculation in his eyes. "It seems you have a vision. Very few people could have accomplished what you've done. But I have a proposition. This ranch could become much more than it is now. I can offer resources, tools, and money. With my help, it could grow faster and larger than you ever imagined." Ben listened carefully, weighing the words. He appreciated offers of help, but something about Mr. Harris did not feel entirely right. He had worked hard to rebuild the ranch on his own terms, and he feared losing control of it. "I appreciate the offer," Ben said slowly, "but I have my own plan. This ranch is more than just land or money. It's about life, care, and patience. I prefer to do it my way." Mr. Harris's smile faltered, though he did not show it openly. "Very well, Ben, I hope you succeed. Remember, opportunity does not wait forever." With that, he rode away, leaving Ben with a mixture of relief and determination. After Mr. Harris left, Ben felt stronger in his resolve. The ranch was his, and he would continue to build it with his own hands and vision. He returned to the orchard, checking the young trees and watering them carefully. The plants swayed in the breeze, and Ben felt a connection to each one, as if they understood his care and dedication. A few days later, the town faced an unexpected challenge. Heavy rain had turned the roads to mud, and a small creek that ran near the ranch began to swell. Ben noticed the rising water and realized it could flood the lower fields. He worked quickly, building temporary dikes and drainage channels to protect the garden and orchard. Rusty helped in his own way, barking and running back and forth, urging Ben onward. The townspeople, seeing the water rising, came to help. Children carried sandbags, adults reinforced the dikes, and neighbors worked tirelessly to save the fields. Ben led the effort, organizing the work and giving instructions. It was exhausting, but together they managed to prevent major damage. By evening, the water had receded, and the ranch remained safe. The event strengthened the bond between Ben and the town. People realized that the ranch was not just a personal project. It was a place that brought the community together. Children learned about teamwork. Adults shared knowledge, and Ben demonstrated leadership without pride or arrogance. The ranch had become a symbol of resilience and hope. After the flood, Ben turned his attention to the house and barn. He repaired small leaks, reinforced the structures, and made sure everything was secure. Every detail mattered to him. He knew that to protect the ranch, he had to maintain it carefully and consistently. Rusty sat by his side, watching attentively, as if understanding the importance of Ben's work. As the days passed, Ben noticed that more visitors were arriving. Some were curious about the ranch, while others were interested in learning about farming, caring for animals, and growing food. Ben welcomed them all, showing them the garden, teaching them about the orchard, and letting them interact with the animals. The ranch was no longer just a project. It had become a place of education, inspiration, and life. One morning, while walking through the orchard, Ben heard a soft rustling in the trees. He looked up and saw a family of deer grazing among the young trees. The sight filled him with wonder and joy. The ranch was attracting wildlife once again, a sign that the land was healing and thriving under careful care. Ben watched silently, appreciating the quiet beauty of the moment. But not everything was easy. One afternoon, a group of crows began to attack the garden, eating the young vegetables and scattering seeds. Ben tried to scare them away, waving his arms and clapping, but they returned the next day. He realized he needed a more thoughtful solution. He built scarecrows using old clothes, straw, and even some of Rusty's toys. The crows were cautious at first, but soon they learned to avoid the garden. Ben smiled, satisfied that careful planning could solve problems without causing harm. The ranch continued to grow. Ben added a small pond where ducks and geese could swim. He built pathways for visitors, lined with flowers and small shrubs. The barn was fully repaired, with separate stalls for the horses, a storage area for tools, and a corner for Rusty to rest. The house was cozy and welcoming, with fresh curtains, clean floors, and the smell of baking bread when Mrs. Collins visited to help. One evening, Ben sat on the porch watching the sunset. Rusty rested at his feet, and the animals grazed quietly in the fields. The town had begun to gather near the ranch, children playing games, parents helping with chores, and neighbors admiring the transformation. Ben felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The ranch was no longer a forgotten place. It was alive, thriving, and inspiring everyone around it. As Part 4 drew to a close, Ben knew that there were still more challenges ahead. He had faced storms, floods, and unexpected visitors, yet each obstacle had made the ranch stronger and the community closer. He realized that the true test was not just rebuilding the land, but also building connections, trust, and hope. Ben looked over the fields, his heart full of determination. "We have come far," he whispered to Rusty, "but the best is yet to come." The ranch glowed in the last light of the sunset, a symbol of perseverance, hard work, and the power of believing in something forgotten. Ben had turned a lost, empty place into a sanctuary of life and hope. The journey was far from over, but the ranch was now more than a dream. It was a reality, and it was ready for the final transformation that would leave everyone speechless. The sun rose slowly over Ben's ranch, casting warm light on the green fields and the young orchard. Birds chirped happily, and Rusty ran through the grass with unrestrained joy. The animals had grown stronger and healthier. The garden was flourishing, and the barn and house looked cared for and welcoming. Ben stood at the top of a small hill, surveying the ranch with a sense of pride and quiet amazement. What had once been a forgotten place was now alive, vibrant, and full of potential. Ben's days had grown busy but fulfilling. Each morning he tended the animals, checked the fences, watered the garden, and made small improvements throughout the ranch. The town had become more involved than ever. Children came daily to learn about caring for plants and animals, while adults offered help, bringing supplies and sharing knowledge. The ranch had become a center of community life, a place where people worked together, learned, and celebrated progress. One day, as Ben was planting new rows of vegetables, he noticed several townspeople gathering near the entrance. Curious, he wiped his hands on his trousers and walked over. The crowd included children, their parents, and even the mayor. They all carried tools, seeds, and supplies, ready to help with a special project. "Good morning, Mr. Ben," said Mrs. Collins, smiling. "We thought it was time we gave the ranch something extra, something that would make it even more wonderful for everyone." Ben tilted his head, intrigued. "What do you have in mind?" The mayor stepped forward, holding a large bundle of blueprints. "We've been thinking," he said. "Your ranch has grown so much and inspired the whole town. We want to create a place where everyone can come, learn, and experience life on a ranch. We've planned new pathways, a small barn for visitors, and even a learning area for children, but we need your guidance to make it perfect." Ben felt a warmth in his chest. He had never imagined that the ranch could become a place so important to the community. He nodded slowly. "I'm honored. Let's make it happen." Over the next several weeks, the ranch underwent its final transformation. Ben and the townspeople worked together to build new pathways lined with flowers, creating a clear route for visitors to walk through the garden, orchard, and animal areas. They constructed a small barn to house animals for children to learn about and care for. They created a shaded area with benches and tables where families could gather, eat, and enjoy the beauty of the land. Ben continued his usual tasks, caring for the animals and maintaining the garden, but he also took time to teach the children about planting, harvesting, and respecting the land. He showed them how to feed the chickens gently, how to measure soil for planting, and how to care for the orchard trees. The children watched in amazement, eager to learn from the cowboy who had brought a forgotten ranch back to life. Rusty became a favorite of the visitors. He ran alongside children as they explored, barking happily and even nudging small hands with his nose to greet them. The horses, once old and weak, had regained their strength and seemed to enjoy the extra attention from visitors. The ducks and geese swam in the pond peacefully, adding life and movement to the landscape. Every corner of the ranch reflected care, effort, and dedication. One morning, Ben decided it was time to plant the final row of the orchard. He had selected fruit trees carefully, thinking about how they would grow tall, provide shade, and offer delicious fruit for the community. With the children helping him, he dug holes, placed the trees in the soil, and carefully watered each one. The children cheered as the young trees stood upright, ready to grow strong and fruitful. Ben felt a deep sense of accomplishment. These trees were not just plants, they were a symbol of growth, resilience, and hope. News of the ranch's transformation spread throughout Cedar Creek and neighboring towns. People came from far and wide to see the place that had been forgotten and brought back to life by the determination of one cowboy. They walked through the garden, visited the orchard, and met the animals. They listened to Ben share stories of hard work, patience, and the value of caring for the land. Everyone left inspired, amazed by the beauty and life of the ranch. One afternoon, the mayor organized a special gathering at the ranch. A small stage was set up, and the townspeople invited everyone to celebrate the completion of the ranch's transformation. Ben stood quietly at the edge, Rusty at his side, watching as families, children, and neighbors filled the open space. The air was filled with laughter, excitement, and admiration. "Today," the mayor began, "we celebrate not just the ranch, but the determination and vision of one man. Ben, you have taken a forgotten place and created something extraordinary. You have brought life back to the land and hope back to the town. Your work will inspire generations to come." Ben felt a lump in his throat. He had never sought recognition, yet hearing these words filled him with gratitude and humility. "Thank you," he said softly. "I didn't do this alone. The land, the animals, and everyone in the town helped make this possible. This ranch belongs to all of us now." Children ran around showing off the flowers they had planted, the vegetables they had watered, and the paths they had helped clear. Families explored the orchard, marveling at the young trees ready to grow tall and strong. Adults shared stories of their own efforts and how the ranch had brought the community together. Ben realized that the ranch had become more than a home or a project. It had become a symbol of what could happen when people worked together with care, patience, and vision. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and gold, Ben walked through the orchard. Rusty followed closely, wagging his tail happily. The trees, the garden, the animals, and the people all reflected the love and dedication poured into the ranch. Ben paused for a moment, breathing in the fresh evening air, and felt a sense of peace he had never known. He thought back to the day he first arrived, when the ranch was overgrown, broken, and empty. He remembered the challenges he had faced, the storms, the floods, the crows, and the moments of doubt. And yet all those challenges had led to this moment. The ranch was alive, thriving, and admired by everyone who saw it. Ben knelt beside one of the young orchard trees and placed his hand gently on the soil. "We did it, Rusty," he whispered. "We brought this place back to life." Rusty barked softly as if agreeing. The animals, the land, and the people had all come together to create something that would last for generations. That evening, the town held a small celebration at the ranch. Families gathered for a picnic, children played games, and neighbors shared stories and laughter. The ranch glowed in the warm light of lanterns and the setting sun. Ben watched from the porch of the house, Rusty resting by his side, and felt a quiet satisfaction. The journey had been long and difficult, but the result was more beautiful than he could have imagined. The ranch had become more than just a home or a project. It was a place of learning, a place of hope, and a place of inspiration. People would come to visit, to learn, and to remember that even the most forgotten places could be brought back to life with care, patience, and determination. Ben knew that life would continue to bring challenges, but he also knew that he and the town could face them together. The ranch had taught him that perseverance and love for the land could create extraordinary results. And now the world could see it too. As the final light of the sun disappeared behind the horizon, the ranch stood strong, full of life, and glowing with promise. Ben stood quietly, Rusty at his feet, and whispered, "This is what we were meant to create." The town had once doubted, the land had once been forgotten, and the animals had once struggled. But together they had built something incredible, a ranch that would inspire, teach, and thrive for years to come. Ben had rebuilt more than a ranch. He had rebuilt hope, community, and the belief that anything could grow with care and dedication. And in the hearts of everyone who visited, the story of the homeless cowboy who rebuilt a forgotten ranch would be remembered forever.